It's interesting. The two terms, one term is mentioned in the in Mishlei, also in the Gemara. The term, it's a classification of verses called the Pesi. Person is a Pesi. And there's another term, a classification person called the Shoter. Shoter. For instance, a sota, a woman who's a suspected adulteress, or even a woman who commits adultery, her classification is sota. So the word sota, we spell it as with a samach. But the way it's written in the Torah, it's written with a sin. We know that a sin and a shin, the only difference in terms of its pronunciation is where you put the dot. It's put on one side, it's the pronunciation is sin, like an S. Otherwise, it's the other side, it's SH, shin, shota. Meaning a woman who's married to a man and she behaves in this irresponsible way to forfeit a marriage and a family, it's like, it's an indication of instability. She's unstable. And therefore, Chazal tell us over there in the beginning of Sota, Rashi cites Chazal, that a person only does that. It's like someone in a spirit of insanity. It's like temporary insanity. How could a woman behave this way without understanding the ramifications of a behavior? So therefore, it's Shota. The Sota is Shota. Therefore, it's spelled with a shin to indicate that this aspect, this is the cause of it. Of course, legally, she's not unstable. But the word Shota means unstable. A Pesi is a person who could understand. However, his temptation gets the best of him. Meaning, we're not talking about similar to the woman who's the adulteress. Pesi's, in the Torah speaks about a woman, a 12-year-old girl, who's a mefuta. She's seduced. Seduction is called a mefuta. Pitu is seduction. Very many things we don't see in this world, and we see it not correctly, is because we have a colored lens. What's the basis of that colored lens? We have conflict of interest. Our conflict of interest creates a seduction, and because of that seduction, we don't see it correctly. So therefore, a Pesi, a person has full control over his life. He's fully stable. But because of his levels of conflict of interest, he doesn't, so to say, he doesn't get it. He doesn't see it correctly. And he's not able to fully internalize the value of whatever may be. That's a Pesi. We find that Yisro, who was Moshe's father-in-law, who was one of the advisors to Paro, the three advisors, which the Gemara talks about, where there were three advisors. Paro had three advisors, Yisro, Eov, and Bilam. And when Paro wanted to know how to deal with the Jewish issue, Bilam had suggested the final solution was enslavement, bondage. It says Yisro heard it and he fled in protest. Yisro was Borach, he fled. Eov, who was a tzaddik, he wasn't a Jew, Job, Shosak, he remained silent. He didn't protest. But Yisro was Borach. It was so clear to him, the level of injustice. I mean, here, Yosef, who was the family of the Jews, and he was the viceroy, and if not for him, Egypt would have perished. I mean, how do you go and enslave this innocent people and mistreat him this way? To the point of almost literally the final solution. Yisro had such a clear understanding of the injustice, he fled in protest. He didn't take into consideration the ramifications of the affront to Paro. How do you flee? It's a level of disrespect. He had it so clear, he fled. So this is the first glimpse we see of his level of clarity in terms of his relevance to truth, to justice. He fled. Yisro Borach. After we were attacked by Amalek, which is the last parasha, and it's like almost astounding. And Chazal in Rashi and Kiseitze, which is the portion of Amalek is mentioned there also. Mocho Timches Amalek. There's a mitzvah zocha. Remember what they did to us when we left Egypt to destroy them. The Chazal compare this to a shota, an unstable person who jumped into a amvati rosachas, into a scalding bath. I mean, it's everybody's afraid to approach the bath because you can get scolded. And this person, he jumps in and he gets burnt. But once he jumped in, he cooled off the bath. People not afraid to approach the bath any longer. Before we were attacked by Amalek, there's no mad band of people. The whole world stood in awe. They trembled after seeing what Hashem had done to the Egyptian armies, how he destroyed them. As it says in the Yoshir, Nivelo al Lufi Edom, Yosemi Road, trembling, overwhelmed. There's no mad people. They attacked us. They took the air out of the wind out of the sails. They minimized us. As a result of that, we were no longer seen in that light in the eyes of the world. So Shlomo tells us in Mishlei, let's take a deprecator. The only way to deal with him is you smite him. That's a let's. A let's is a deprecator, scoffer. Something which is obvious, so valuable, and something should be revered. And there's so many takeaways. The person who doesn't have the capacity to appreciate, that person is classified as a let's. He does not have any capacity to appreciate what that is. That's a let's. So there's no point in trying to reason with him, getting into an intellectual discussion to try to convince him. He has a blockage. He cannot, if you're not able to see this and it doesn't resonate with you, it's hopeless. So how do you deal with that person? Let's talk here. Amalek, mochatim ches Amalek. Pesi Yarim. Yisro was an idolater, who Yisro didn't get it right. When he saw what happened with Amalek, Mashmur Shamobo, portion begins, Vayishma Yisro. What did he hear? Which caused them to abandon all this glory in Bidjan and to go out into the desert to become part of Jewish people. He heard two things, Luchemes Amalek and Kriyas Yamsuf. Kriyas Yamsuf, the order is the splitting of the sea and the battle with Amalek, which we'll discuss in a moment. When he saw this was the final level of understanding, that a level of clarity, everything has no value, but this, he gives it all up, goes into the desert. So that's Pesi Yared, the Pas Pesi, the person until now had this conflict of interest. He had this level of seduction, which didn't allow him to fully grasp it, to internalize it, to understand true value. He became wizened. And when he became wizened, he left Midian, went out into the desert, despite the fact the desert is a level of desolation, to become part of the Jewish people, to be there for the receiving of the Torah. That's the understanding. But we see something interesting. Normally we would say, why did Yisro have this capacity? Well, you realize Moshe fled Egypt. Moshe was a man of truth. We pointed it out. Moshe was the only one who was qualified to receive the Torah. The Torah is classified as emes on the absolute level, truth. As Shlomo says, emes kanev al timkor, acquire truth, don't sell truth. Moshe Rabbeinu, in his whole essence, his whole totality was truth. Never compromised truth. And that's why only he was qualified, we'll see in a moment, besides having a neshama, which was the Klibna of Klal Yisrael, his whole being was truth, not to compromise at any level. Moshe, as the adopted prince of Egypt, goes out to see how his brothers are faring, and he sees an Egyptian beating a Jew. What does he do immediately? He kills the Egyptian. But what about the consequences of that? You know, maybe it pays, turn a blind eye. You know the value of having an insider in the inner sanctums of Egypt to be able to be an advocate for the Jews. How do you put everything in jeopardy? When it comes to compromising truth, if an injustice is done, you have to deal with it. And he killed the Egyptian immediately. And what happened? Ultimately, he had to flee. And he fled Egypt for what? For over 60 years. He was in Midian. And what happens when he comes to Midian? He finds women shepherdesses being attacked. I mean, here he's a fugitive. They're looking for him. This doesn't deter Moshe from what? Entering into the fray. He beats away the attackers, waters the sheep, they go home. What happens? He marries Yisro's daughter, Tzipporah. Now, Yisro was exposed to Moshe, we're talking for 60 years, over 60 years. Do you know what it means to be exposed to Moshe Rabbeinu? Moshe Rabbeinu, we say, Tov l'tzadik, Tov l'shcheno. An ordinary tzaddik, if you just have any level of relevance to him, it's good for the shochet, for the neighbor, because he's going to be influenced. There's something, even through just osmosis, just being in his environment. So you can imagine it's your son-in-law, married to your daughter, what level of relationship, how Moshe Rabbeinu's relationship with his father impacted on him to appreciate what this is all about. Now, Moshe goes back to Egypt. And he asks permission because he had taken an oath that he will not leave Midian without permission. And his father says, go. And he hears about the Malchus, everything. And now all of a sudden, after all this orientation, first we see he had a capacity in terms of the protest when he fled. He couldn't tolerate the miscarriage of justice, such a breach of truth. So we see he already had that relevance to truth. Now he's Moshe Rabbeinu exposed for 60 years, and Moshe Rabbeinu represents emes on that absolute level, and he goes to Egypt, and now he's coming back, and now he hears Milchemes HaMolech and Kriyas Yamsuf. Kriyas Yamsuf, Milchemes HaMolech, splitting the sea. Now this is the final clincher. Now he's ready to come. He reaches the pinnacle of level of internalization. He's ready to give it all up, and he comes into the desert. That's why Yisro had this capacity, and the rest of the world didn't have this capacity. The rest of the world heard about Milchemes HaMolech. The world knew about Kriyas Yamsuf. The only person who left whatever he had to go into the desert was only Yisro. No one else. You know, it's interesting. We find that throughout history, except time of Purim, the whole concept of converts was very rare. People converted to Judaism. Was Rus HaMovia. She was a princess. She was a Moabite princess. She converted. Very few. Time of Purim, when the Jews, due to what happened there, Haman was killed, and all the Amalekites, everything was immediately changed, where the enemy became the victim. We were able to destroy the enemy in a moment. It says all the non-Jews, they wanted to convert, because this was the so-called the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. But if not for that, it's unheard of conversion. Why should a non-Jew want to convert? You have to have a special schus to convert. You have to have an appreciation for emes to be able to give it all up to become a Jew with all the restrictions. So the whole world heard of Kriyas Yamsuf and Milchemes HaMolech. But you have to have relevance to truth for it to resonate. We already say Yisro had that minute piece of him, that component of truth, in terms of, but he demonstrated by fleeing Yisro when he fled from the final solution of Egypt, which was considered major. And that wasn't going to deter him, regardless of the consequences. Now, with the follow-up, Moshe Rabbeinu, all the years, the orientation, now the clincher was Kriyas Yamsuf and Milchemes HaMolech. That's Pesi Yarim. The Pesi, the person who was seduced by all the reasons not to see it right, he overcame that seduction and understood what the primary was and what's not important. Ernie, this question is coming from the south, not from the north. Good, Ernie.
Why are we celebrating the conversion of Yisro to the point that we even know in Parsha?
We're not celebrating the conversion of Yisro. We're not. We're celebrating why. Firstly, why is the Parsha named after him? Okay, why? So a number of reasons given. Firstly, he advised Moshe in terms of the whole judicial system. When Moshe adjudicated every case, every incident, whenever there's any level of dispute, Moshe Rabbeinu adjudicated everything. Moshe goes and he offers his advice to Moshe. He says, it's not going to last. You're going to wither. It's not the way to go. So the whole concept of higher court, lower courts, and how you should deal with all these issues, this was Yisro's suggestion. And Moshe presented it before Hashem. Hashem says, that's the way to go. So because he added that parsha of judicial system came through Yisro, therefore he merited the parsha should be named after him. That's one reason given. Another reason given in Chazal is because why did he go out into the desert? He came and left his glory to receive the Torah. That means he's willing to give everything up for the sake of the Torah. That's the model. We received Torah, we fled, we left Egypt, we were slaves, we became free men, and we were freed for that purpose. Yisro could have stayed in Midian and continue his life as it was. Only because he came to this level of realization of truth, he abandoned everything to go into the desert. So this is the model of what is the ultimate versus anything else that exists. That's the other reason given why the parsha is named after him. I always say the best way to be influenced, and it's the most lasting, is when you have role models. When you have a role model, you could study from today forever. When you study, that's abstract. When you have a role model, you see it in real time. And when you see it in real time, in addition to having certain levels of understanding, that's when it really impacts on the person. That's the role model. Vayishma Yisro Koim Nijon. The Torah now identifies him. Who heard whatever he heard? He was the Kohen Midian. He was the Sheik of Midian. Chosid Moshe. He was the father-in-law of Moshe. Es kol asher ose elokim leMoshe lishalamo. All that Hashem had done on behalf of Moshe and Yisrael, his nation. Yehotzi Hashem es Hashem Mitzrayim. That he had taken the Jewish people out of Egypt. So firstly, he's identified as Kohen Midian, meaning now, by giving us a sense of his background, what is his status? He's Kohen Midian. That means when he's going to leave, what is he giving up? He's giving up this position as Kohen Midian. Rashi, Vayishma Yisro, Mashvu Shomu Bo, Kriyas Yamsum Chems Amalek. He heard the splitting of the sea and the war with Amalek. Yisro Sheva Shemus Nikrolo. Yisro has 7 names. Ruel, Yesi, Yisro, Chovev, Chever, Keni, Potio. Yeser, why is he called? What was his name? Yeser? Al Shem Sheyite Parsha Achas Batorah, Bato Terze. Since there was a portion added in Torah, Ato Terze, this is the judicial system. Yisro, Shins Gayer, when he converted, the Kim HaMitzvahs, Hosifalo Os Achas, Al Shmo. That's the Vov. Chovev, what's Chovev? Why is it called Chovev? Shechiviv Satorah. Because he endeared the Torah. The Chovu, Yisro, Shalem and Chovev, Chosin Moshe. Ish Omrim, Ruel, Oviv Shel Yisro Hoyo. Okay? So now, I always mention name it except Sofer, beautiful word. It says he heard Kriyas Yamsuf. Okay, Kriyas Yamsuf is something to be impressed with. Melchemes Amalek. There's no bad band who attacks us. Why is that so impressive? The miracles that took place at the sea, Yecheskel Navi was never exposed to that. 200, whether it's 50, 200, 250, it's something which is, there's nothing comparable to it. Okay, so that makes sense. He was impressed, and only he was the only one to be impressed to this degree. The rest of the world was not. But what's the Melchemes Amalek? What is so impressive about Melchemes Amalek? We're attacked by this nomad people. So Ksavsov is a beautiful world. The Chazal tell us that Yisro had done his research. He worshipped every deity in the world. Every deity that you could worship, and he researched it and worshipped it. At the end of all his experiences, he came to realization there's only one true religion, only monotheism. Everything else is false. There's only Hashem Echad. That was the conclusion. Okay? What happened? He sees Kriyas Yamsuf. And Hashem performed Kriyas Yamsuf on behalf of the Jewish people. Okay? After Kriyas Yamsuf, what precipitated Amalek? So in last week's parsha, they said, Hayesh Elokimi Monu Imayim. Is God with us? Is he not with us? So Yisro was astounded. Here, the Jewish people, they're exposed to the 10 plagues. They see Kriyas Yamsuf. They sing the Shira. And afterwards, they say, Hayesh Elokimi Kerbenu Moyin. Is God with us or not? So what do you see from that? That regardless at what level you're at, unless you have a continued support system, you never know what tomorrow's going to bring or what the next minute's going to bring. It's a slippery slope. He understood you need every level of securing and upshoring to make sure that you don't slip off the top of the mountain. That's Mashvu Shomo Mo Kriyas Yamsuf. That even after Kriyas Yamsuf, you're able to have a Mechemes Abolek. If that's the case, regardless of how secure I believe I am, you're never sure what tomorrow's going to bring. As a result of that, he abandoned his glory to become part of the Jewish people for that reason. That's the Ksav Sofer. And therefore, it's in that order. Kriyas Yamsuf, Mechemes Abolek. It heard what Hashem had done Moshe Yisrael. The Torah is already telling us. Shokol Moshe connected Yisrael. Moshe was the equivalent of Klal Yisrael. I mean, the question, did Yisrael know this? I mean, the Torah is telling us he heard all that Hashem had done for Moshe and Yisrael. I mean, how did Yisrael know that? As we said, Moshe Rabbeinu, his whole makeup, spiritual makeup, was the equivalent of the whole Klal Yisrael. The way I understand it's only what the Torah is revealing this to us. Here, Moshe was the leader. What he did with Moshe Klal Yisrael. Did he appreciate what that meant? The answer is no. What did he do for them? You read this Hamon ubeber ubamolek. Now let's talk about it. You read this Hamon. Even what happened until you read someone? What happened? The Jews were complaining, and we're going to starve. So Hashem says, "I will give them the money." Until then, as I pointed out, Hashem did not react to their misbehavior, to their lack of faith. As Hashem only said, Moshe Rabbeinu says, "When you have the money, then you know Hashem took you out of Mitzrayim, not us." Until then, they claimed Aaron and Moshe took them out. Moshe, you people are at fault that we're in this predicament. After the mon, what did Moshe say? You will know that Hashem took you out. And therefore, after the mon, when they complained, therefore, there was this very severe reaction. He heard about Yurid the Samon, which revealed to Yisro the takeaway was Hashem took him out of Egypt. It's another level. The Be'er was, which precipitated Amalek and Amalek. What was the battle at Amalek? It wasn't a simple battle. It wasn't a physical battle. It says, Kishayorem Moshe Yoda Gova Yisrael. As Moshe raised his hands, the Jews were victorious. So the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah asks, Yodayim Shel Moshe Osus Mulchama. So it says, if the Jews, they looked towards heavenward, then they were victorious. But if not, then they started to what? To lose the battle. This was a spiritual battle. So therefore, you heard the three things. You read the Samon was confirmed that Hashem took him out of Egypt. The Be'er, which is what precipitated, that tells you to what degree you could fall back. And that's why they said, and they received the water. Because Hashem said, Moshe said, Hashem, you're testing God. And Amalek was the actual, he sent the dog that was bitten by the dog, which is Amalek. Now, this is it. Yehotzi Hashem. But what was the clincher? What was the ultimate clincher for Yisro? Zugadola al Kulam. This was the ultimate. That Hashem took us out of Egypt. What does that mean? So I always ask the question. A person is imprisoned and it's solitary confinement. The walls are 1,000 feet thick, subterranean, impossible to come out of there. And somebody goes and destroys the prison. kills the warden, kills the prison guards. And now all you have to do is just walk out. Egypt was destroyed. But you know what was most impressive? Hotzi Hashem, that Hashem took us out of Egypt. Zugdola Kulam. This is greater than all of them. Why is that greater than all of them? Right? What would you say on this? I just thought of something which I never said before. I'll tell you what we said in the past. The tenth Makkah was Baks Bechoros. And we find the Gemara continues, we had a Gemara at the end of Izul Neshech. We find that associated with the law of Ribis, it's mentioned, I took you out of Egypt. What does leaving Egypt have to do with Ribis? So the Gemara says that a person lends his own money with interest, and he says, no, I'm not the lender, I represent the non-Jew. But God knows you're the lender. It's your money. But he tries to present it in a way that he's only acting on behalf of a non-Jew. So Hashem says, just as I was able to discern between the droplet of semen, between a Bechor and non-Bechor, which only I could do, no one else could do, even an angel is not able to do that, I'm able to make that discernment whether it's you're the lender or you're only representing a non-Jew as the lender. That's the Gemara we had in Ezra Neshech. So what did the Max Bechoros tell us, Yochi Hashem? Until the Max Bechoros, that we didn't see it in its totality. You know, God is a deity. He controls the terrestrial, the celestial, the this, the that. That conception, which we mention always, is procreation. That this is the ultimate level that he's the creator. Because we emulate creation through procreation. That droplet, whether it's the Bechor or not, that is the determining factor that he's the creator. That's Kehotzi Hashem. So it was more than the Yirid Samon, it was more than the Kriyas Yams, it was more than everything. Okay? That's what I'm thinking now. That's Kehotzi Hashem Hashem. We left Egypt with the Max Bechoros. That's the Yod Chazokah. The Yod Chazokah was Max Bechoros. But what we said in the past was Yisro wasn't an ordinary person. Yisro understood what Egypt represented, and he understood what it meant to be a Mem Teshari Tuma. If a person has more blood, more drugs in his system than blood, that person could he be detoxed? He's already, there's no hope for that person to recover. He's beyond recovery. We, spiritually speaking, we're beyond recovery. There was like a tiny spark of spirituality left in us, and God ignited it to a level that we left Egypt. And we said in Noz Yoshim, he was astounded that Hashem could take us and literally revamp us. We came out like we're different people. We're no longer that same people that were in Egypt. Not only in the physical sense of slavery, spiritually attuned. Our whole spiritual, we were rewired to have a capacity to every day was an ascent. That's what he was amazed. That's Kehotzi Hashem Yisrael Mitzrayim. Zu Gadol HaKulam. It's not the physical leaving, the bondage that we're not physically bound to them. That's Kehotzi Hashem Yisrael Mitzrayim. That's the way we explained it in the past. We had said in the past, Moshe used to say it in the name of the Alt of Slabodka. When Moshe Rabbeinu was in the burning bush, and he originally gave every reason why he should not be the Redeemer. One of the things he says, they're not worthy. They're not worthy. So Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, the sign will be they will serve me on that mountain. They'll serve me on that mountain. Meaning, there'll be a Kabbalah Satorah. I mean, what kind of answer is that? They're not worthy, but he says, they're going to serve me on that mountain. So the Alta Slabodka used to say, you see a person, and you see it. He's a Jews for Jay. He has tattoos from his neck to his toes. Fast forward 20 years later, you go to a Kollel Yerushalayim, and you see a person. It's that same person, but he's not the same person. What happened? You can't believe the transition, the metamorphosis. You can't believe it's the same person. He didn't understand the core of the Jew, that all this is all superficial. That we behave a certain way. It's not the essence of the Jew. When will our essence be exposed and revealed? At Sinai. When we stand at Sinai and say Nasav and Nishma, then you understand who the Jew is. Which Moshe at that moment didn't understand who we were. So therefore Hashem says the oath will be, the sign will be, when they will serve the Elohim on that mountain, then you'll understand who they are. Rabbi Akiva, what was he? He was a shepherd. He was an ignoramus. And because he saw a certain incident, he saw how water was dripping on a stone and how the water wore the stone thin, he decided he wants to study Torah. Because he says, my heart is no harder than that stone. If the water could pierce that stone, Torah, which is compared to water, could pierce my heart. And he became the leading Torah sage of all generations. Could you believe this ignoramus shepherd had the story with his father-in-law? He was disinherited. His wife, he was married to Kalba Savua's daughter. And he couldn't believe a man that comes back to 24,000 students. This is his son-in-law.